Have you ever felt the weight of silence? Not the silence of a library or an empty dawn. I'm talking about the kind that shuts out the crickets in the middle of a corner, that makes dogs stop barking as if they'd been cut off in midair, that leaves your body colder before your brain even understands why. Daniel Rocha, a hunter for 20 years, a man who trusts footprints, not hunches, felt this. And in that instant, he knew it wasn't an animal, it wasn't a man, and worst of all, it wasn't an accident. What happened near the Rio das Almas that September night in 2023 wasn't an attack. It was an encounter, and what Daniel saw, what both of them saw, he and his girlfriend on the other side of the glass, doesn't fit into official reports, nor into social media videos, because it's not something you show, it's something you recognize. Even if you've never seen it before, in the next few minutes you will hear what really happened, not as legend, not as fiction, but as a pattern that has already been recorded by government censors, that has already appeared on forgotten geological maps, that is buried in oral histories that no one repeats aloud anymore, and in the end, you will wonder. Why, in more than 40 undisclosed testimonies over the last 30 years, do all the survivors describe the same thing? Not a monster, but 3 light knocks, like someone asking permission before disappearing forever? You can stop now, but part of you already knows, if you continue reading, you will never hear silence the same way again. The Protocol of Silence. A story based on unrecorded events. Serra da Mantiqueira, Minas Gerais, 2023 to 2025. Daniel Rocha doesn't believe in premonitions. At 33, a hunter since he was 14, he knows that the world speaks through footprints, smells, changes in the wind, not through shivers down his neck. But on the morning of September 27th, 2023, waking up with red earth on his left shoe, inside his house in São Paulo, 3 weeks after that night near the Rio das Almas, he understood. The silence of the mountain hadn't ended. It had only changed location. Clara said nothing. She only looked at the shoe, then at her own hands, and whispered, "It marked us." She didn't say "it" as if she were talking about a man. She said it as one names a season, inevitable, ancient, indifferent. It all began, as it always does, with silence. That September night, camped on a flat stretch east of the Serra Negra Preservation Area, Daniel and Clara had spent the day tracking wild boars, signs of digging, gnawed tree trunks, the smell of fresh urine in the low vegetation. Nothing unusual. The van was parked on a shallow granite slab, almost imperceptible under the layer of ferns and dry leaves. Clara was the first to notice. The crickets had stopped, not gradually, suddenly, as if someone had turned off a radio. She woke Daniel at 2:04 a.m., not with a shout, with a phrase whispered like a secret she already knew by heart. "Daniel, he's breathing outside." He thought it was a wanderer, a poacher, anything with human DNA. He grabbed his shotgun, put on his boots, and opened the door. The air was heavy, humid, but not hot. It was absent. No insects, no wind in the leaves, only the crunch of the gravel underfoot. Then he saw the footprints, 5, precisely spaced 1.3 meters apart, each one almost 30 centimeters long. Long toes, sharp tips like chisels, deep heels, as if something weighing 200 kilos were walking upright, without haste, without hesitation. No irregularities, no slips. A rhythm. Daniel followed the trail to behind the van. He stopped, beyond the light of his headlights, at the edge of the clearing, Something detached itself from the trunk of an ancient maritime pine, 7.5 feet, maybe more. A broad chest, a narrow waist, arms too long, hands almost touching the knees. Dark, damp fur, with lighter patches on the chest, as if it had been wet inside. The head, it wasn't a wolf's. It was elongated, yes, with a pronounced snout, but its eyes were set like a man's. And when he turned its face slowly, Daniel saw its lower jaw was almost square, like that of someone who had chewed stone for decades. It didn't growl, it didn't back away. It only breathed, a low, moist sound that made Daniel's chest vibrate before his ears registered it. He fired. Once. Then again. The creature didn't retreat. It wasn't frightened. It simply disappeared, not running, but plunging into the shadows as if the undergrowth were parting its path. It was then that he heard the growl, not loud, but deep, as if coming from the earth, a frequency that made his teeth grind, his stomach churn, his knees weaken. Daniel ran. He locked the door. Clara was paralyzed, her eyes fixed on the window, trembling lips repeating in Tupi-Guarani, a language she had never learned, but which her maternal grandmother whispered in her dreams. Yandu meme, anama e ikwe. The Watchman is here. Don't look at him. 3 months later, Ricardo Silva, a forest ranger for 18 years with a degree in ecology from UFMG, was called to investigate the disappearance of Marcos Oliveira. The Jeep was parked on Estrada do Corvo, door open, key in the ignition, dried blood on the door handle. The campsite, 100 meters away, looked like it had been swept away by a whirlwind. Tent in tatters, cooler overturned, backpack empty, but the ground underneath soaked in coagulated blood. Ricardo didn't call for reinforcements. He knew what to look for. He found the footprints 15 meters from the camp. Same dimensions, same spacing. But now, with something new. Between the footprints, smaller oval marks, as if something had landed there twice. Light, like those of a smaller creature, or lighter, or younger. He followed the trail to a giant Jequitibah tree, hollow at the base. Inside, a deer, not killed by a hunter. The ribs were open outwards, as if pulled from the inside. Meat torn in irregular strips, not cut. And on the inner walls of the trunk, 4 vertical grooves, 2.7 meters from the ground. Deep, made with force but without haste. That's when Ricardo realized the silence had returned. No owls, no frogs, not even the buzzing of mosquitoes. He called the region's automatic acoustic monitoring center, a network of sensors installed for biodiversity studies. He requested data from the last 72 hours. The report arrived in 22 minutes. In the early morning hours of Marcos's disappearance, from 3:18 a.m. to 3:25 a.m., all sensors within a 3.2-kilometer radius recorded an abrupt drop in frequencies above 85 Hz, the equivalent of a biological blackout, as if the entire forest had held its breath. Ricardo never included this in the official report. What unites Daniel and Ricardo is not coincidence. It's geography. Both encounters occurred within what geological maps call the Valley of the Perpetual Shadow, an active underground fault with mineral-rich groundwater that generates slight magnetic anomalies. Sensors from the CPRM have detected over the last 20 years peaks of microscopic seismic activity in this region, always in the spring and autumn after periods of prolonged rain. More importantly, it is also the migratory route of a remaining Maxakali tribe, which officially abandoned the area in the 1940s, but whose oral histories collected by anthropologists in the 1970s speak of Yukshin Jamian, he who walks between two worlds. It is not a spirit. It is not a god. It is described as he who watches over the root, an entity that does not inhabit the forest, but maintains it. It appears when the balance is broken, when someone removes a marked stone, when hunting takes place out of season, when roads are built over ancient ceremonial paths. Marcos Oliveira camped on top of one of these paths, a smooth stone marker with 3 vertical grooves, which he used as a base to level his tent. Daniel and Clara parked above an underground spring, a point where the water emerges laden with minerals that, according to the Maxakali elders, make dreams heavy. The creature did not attack them. It merely re-established the boundary. 2 years later, Daniel returned alone with a field recorder, infrasound sensors, and an old topographic map bought from a collector in Ouro Preto. He didn't go to hunt. He went to listen. He spent 3 nights in the same stretch. On the 3rd night, at 3:07 a.m., silence fell. The recorder captured 6 minutes and 43 seconds of acoustic vacuum. No frequencies above 92 hertz. Then a single sound, a low breath, repeated 3 times. Ha, 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 as if something were imitating human breathing. Daniel didn't leave the cabin. He didn't shoot. He only spoke, in a calm voice, repeating the words Clara had whispered that night. Yandu meme, anamae ikwe. The silence continued for another 11 seconds. Then, the recorder registered a single sound. A light tap, 3 dry knocks, talk, talk, talk on the side of the van, like someone knocking on the door and asking, "Did you understand?" Daniel deleted the file, but the next morning, while wiping the fogged windshield with his arm, he saw 3 vertical lines drawn in the vapor, 22 centimeters high, 4 centimeters apart, aligned at eye level for a man 1.78 meters tall. He didn't wipe them. He drove to São Paulo. With them still there, like a blessing or a warning. You can believe what you just heard or not, and it doesn't matter. What matters is that somewhere in the deep southeast, between São Paulo and the Serra da Mantiqueira, between the dense forests and the dirt roads that don't appear on GPS, there are places where the world hasn't yet been fully named, where silence still has weight, where certain marks aren't made to threaten, but to remind. Daniel never went back to hunting, but he also never went back to sleeping with the windows open. Clara doesn't talk about that night anymore, but every time she hears a dog howl 3 times in a row, she closes her eyes and takes a deep breath as if giving thanks. And Ricardo? He left his badge, but he still drives on the back roads of Minas Gerais, always with the windows closed, always with the radio off. And when he passes near an old Jequitaba tree, especially after the rain, he doesn't look in the rearview mirror, because he learned one thing. Some things aren't in books, they aren't on maps, and they aren't there to be defeated. They are there to be recognized. If this story stayed with you, if for a second you listened to the silence around you more attentively, then maybe you already know more than you imagine. And maybe, just maybe, you've already felt something too. Something you didn't tell anyone. Something that, to this day, has no name, but that you would recognize if you saw it again. Comment below. Have you ever felt the weight of silence?